excuse me now.
Following him very closely is another astute educationist, someone who is currently the provost of the Federal College of Education, Kotangora, Professor Farouk Rashid Haruna. And of course, last but not the least, is a former Coasi president. That was the person somebody was thinking I was trying to introduce initially. But I knew what I was doing. Ladies and gentlemen, for someone who was a great leader between 2004 and 2008, Comrade Remy Makinde. Great Coasi. Thank you very much, sir. I'd like each of them to, if we just have a mic that they can use, an extra mic that they can use. Yes, we have these very important leaders have gone through teachers. And so you ask yourself, how come? Is it the cause of, because they say it is the people who produce the leaders, or the leaders come from the followers. And also the leaders come from teachers who have taught them. Were they taught right? Or is it that they were not taught at all? Or is it that some people chose to learn and some others didn't? What is actually, it is no gainsaying that the country has a very terrible leadership challenge. In fact, we have a very serious leadership challenge, I beg your pardon. And we shall be examining these issues with these erudite scholars and educationists right here. And I'll start with Prof. Abiodun. When you hear about leadership as an institutional imperative for effective change, what comes to your mind, especially knowing that we know today that change has to be qualified before you now accept or deny it? We need to really qualify change, I'm sure, because some people came with change before, they refused to qualify it, so many people didn't understand. But now we are talking about effective change. What comes to your mind?
Thank you very much.
I'm sure you can remove your mask. You have enough distance.
Sorry, I have also accustomed to it. Pardon me. Let me please observe a little protocol by thanking the organizers of this program and by acknowledging the fact that they are setting a pace in celebrating leadership. If I can put it in a simple form, leadership is about looking for the best to do the most difficult job. Looking for the best to do the most difficult job. And you also need to build on the pedigree, the antecedents, and of course the organizational environment that will drive the leadership. What that means is that there should be express outlay of expectations, of commitment, and of course understanding on how to achieve the desired goals. Part of the problem we have made, let's say at the global level or at the general level in this country, is that we have not even defined the kind of country we want to build. We don't know. If you ask the average Nigerian, what is the Nigerian dream? Nigerian dream is just hanging in the air. But we don't talk of the Nigerian project. What is the Nigerian project about? It's about aping those who colonized Nigeria, who exploited Nigeria, those who planted a reign of successive elitism to the detriment of the toiling and suffering majority of Nigerians. So in which case, we are not defining our goals in the context of liberating the poor, freeing those who are in bondage, empowering the toiling and the underprivileged. So what we have had successively is we have passed debating from one elite group to another elite group, and they always protect and work for the elite interest. In talking of leadership for change, we must talk of new values. And by new values, I mean we must define our goals. What kind of society are we trying to build? What kind of organization are we trying to build? Like Julius Nyerere once said, until we define the kind of nation we are trying to build, we cannot design our education to achieve our goals. In the Ujama policy, that is the policy of digitalization, policy of African socialism, it actually brought it out that there must be a close link between education and the development of the country. Though we all say education for national development, which nation are we developing? Which values are we working towards? If you take the values we have stated in our national policy on education, for instance, I see them in a kind of mumbo-jumbo version that is capable of creating confusion. You want to build a just and egalitarian society, yet you are not driving the education of the children of the poor. You have a constitution. Chapter 2 says Nigeria should be an egalitarian society where there should be education that is free and affordable to all Nigerian children. But they have limited it to what they call basic education of 9 years. Even that basic education, are we funding it correctly? And what end in view are we working towards? So if you ask me, I will say we need to go back and define the nation we are trying to build. Are we working towards a country where people are empowered, where the interests of the majority poor are put at the forefront, rather than interests of those politicians? Well, we don't have statesmen and stateswomen. We have politicians. Politicians think of the next election. Statesmen and stateswomen think of the next generation.
Thank you very much, Prof. Very wonderful introduction there. I'll just summarize a bit of what he said. He talked about the fact that leadership is looking for the best to do the most difficult jobs. In fact, that's a new definition of leadership we should put down. And he's looking at the structure, the initial structure for leadership and what is the new Nigeria, or what is the Nigerian project all about. When we are able to define correctly the Nigerian project, then we will be able to put it in our educational system and achieve it through teaching the students. I'll come to you, Professor Farouk. Do you agree with some of this? What are your own thoughts on this? Maybe you share the mic and go, yeah, thank you.
This one is sleeping. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, first, I want to join my former chairman, because I'm still a member of ASU. I wouldn't want to risk any praise. To congratulate ASU. Truly, I am sure the celebrant today will feel very, very fulfilled. I think this is a lesson that the Committee of Provosts will have to borrow and begin to do. I think it's a step in the right direction. When an individual is recognized by his community, his problems are half solved. Well, I agree to a very large extent to what my distinguished professor has said, but I want to look at certain issues in a very different way. Well, leadership is about creating an effective vision for the future. And in creating that vision, the leader must be able to communicate effectively and motivate his team members for the attainment of that vision. I'm happy you talked about the teacher, or whom I represent here. And if you look at the teacher education in Nigeria that are supposed to produce the leaders, you will have to look at the leadership in Nigerian context in two different ways from the way I see it. One, the individual himself, the person who is the leader. Who is he? Why is he on the leadership position? Is it to amass wealth? Is it to bring about the desired change? Or is it because he wants to hold the title? There are people who go into positions because of title. I want to be called provost. But you remain a redundant provost because of your inability to make use of the opportunity given to you. Because every responsibility comes with opportunities. Now, I want to say that if you look at our curriculum, the teacher education curriculum is also in the state of comatose. Every day we are bringing new things that are highly irrelevant to the needs of the society. Answer: until you restore the dignity of teachers, nothing positive will ever come out of teacher education. The teacher is responsible for making every other individual in the community. Yes. As for me, he is the most significant, he is the most important person that the nation should pay attention to. And in doing that, you discover that a lot of teachers today have run away into other professions. Why? Because if you hear salaries are not paid, it is that of teachers. If you hear somebody cannot get a hand in marriage, check properly with the teacher. So with this kind of picture created, it is very, very difficult. And like I said, the society creates a lot of problems for the leader. The Nigerian Factor, please don't forget about it. You are a leader, you come with a vision, with a mission, with highly motivated force. You are ready to achieve your target goals. But the Nigerian Factor plays in. Who do you know in government? How can you get things done? Is still a problem. So the environment, to a great extent for me, influences the successes or otherwise of the leader. A lot of people go into leadership position today truly without the requisite qualification and the requisite experience to make any meaningful change in the organization. And they say you cannot bring in a donkey into an institution and transform him into a horse. You can only polish him into a better donkey. So long as the kind of teachers that we recruit today are the ones to produce tomorrow's leaders, then there's a big question. We are all responsible for that failure. As far as I'm concerned, we have failed. We are only looking at the individual leaders as they have failed. No, the society as a whole has failed to realize the need to put the right individuals in the right place. So until such is done, it is very, very difficult for us to get it right.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Farouk. Prof has raised some issues. He has raised the issue of the environment affecting the leaders that are produced. He has raised the issue of teachers. Most of the people here are people who produce the teachers that produce the people that become leaders. And he has given enough to the teacher education curriculum. What should be, because I am of the view that if we continue to talk and talk and talk without providing solutions, then the talk is for nothing. What should be done step by step to correct the teacher education curriculum to be able to accommodate a curriculum that will take into consideration what Prof has said here, the structure of a new Nigeria, and also taking into consideration the way we impact this knowledge to teachers, because this is all about teaching the teachers who will teach the leaders. What are the steps to be taken to correcting all these?
Leadership. And leadership as an imperative in institutions will make us think primarily of leadership of organizations as maybe sense. When we look at leadership of organizations, they are usually profit-oriented. And the main goal is to make money backwards to the organizers, in the school setting, to the proprietors. And what happens in this realm?
You discover that we are supposed to identify the kind of institutional leadership we're talking about. The institutional leadership we're talking about is an institution. The teacher education is an institution to sympathize with. Sympathize in the sense that it is not supposed to be a money-making venture, because it is a setting that has been made unattractive. And even in the education sector itself, the subdivision of teacher education is the most deprived, the most undesired, and the least funded. In this wise, how do you now look at the leader in that setting? In a business organization, the leader starts from the financier. In the digital sector, sympathetically, it does not start from the government that is the sole financier or exemplary financier. It starts from probably the chief executive. I sympathize with the people seated beside me here. It starts from him, but he's not the financier. But one of the essentials that makes a leader to be imperative for success and change is availability of financial resources, which he is not capable of having.
because he's running a non-profitable organization. A kind of an organization that should rather attract philanthropism. But that sympathetic attitude, who is that philanthropist? Who will want to finance teacher education when there is medical education that will pay back in this Nigerian setting where politicians and not technocrats are in power? The situation is so sympathetic that you realize that having a leader, the discussion of leadership in teacher education should have a different focus. In fact, should be separated from other educational sectors that have returns. If I send my son to go and study medicine, for example, the prospects are there. I can almost begin to imagine the next type of car I will ride in 2 years after I might have graduated. But if I send my son to a college of education, I begin to sympathize with him how much I will be giving him after he might have graduated. So what happens here? The leader there is primarily not empowered to be able to pursue his vision. When you want to become a provost, even a vice chancellor, they ask you for a vision, and mission. But it dies there at the quarter of the interview, in the locale of the interview. It dies there because that vision and mission is not allowed to. And yet we desire for a change. We want to train teachers that will meet up with challenges, global challenges that will cause changes. It is primarily not powered enough. And so, he has to address what we call in business terms as an imperative for change, what we call process. Process in the sense that additional responsibilities beyond having to supervise, organize, and lead teachers, his followers, his deans, his classroom teachers to attain the goals of producing teachers that will become functional to society. He now addresses process. And the process are that he has to make money. He becomes a businessman. He becomes a teacher, a leader that is now serving for purpose of the imperative of organization that must survive. He now focuses on survival of the system to exist, just as government and politicians want it. They don't want institutions to close down, but they don't finance the institution. The provost of children education is now forced to maintain that there is no crisis, yet the funds are not there. It takes him away from there. I know a college of education that now has bakery, headed by former deans, that have water producing industry, headed by former heads of departments, taking them away from the primary goals of producing functional teachers. Because we have suddenly turned educational institutions and the teacher institutions into business institutions. You forced them to, because you have failed to pursue you what to do. What to do. It's for us to identify the teacher education setting, one, as the most desired, the most essential, before, ahead of medical sciences, above law studies, above managerial studies, because they will eventually produce those who will produce the teachers, the lawyers, and the doctors. How? It should be considered as total non-profit making. So when you are allocating funds as government, and that's why government should not come in as leaders, you cannot operate an organization without by separating yourself from the leadership role, because the first duty of a leader is to provide funds for his organization to run. If I were to produce telephones now as an organization, I must provide funds that should make it run. But they are supposed to produce teachers that will develop those who will develop this country, and teachers first are the bedrock of the system of development. So they are part of the leaders. They primarily are the leaders. The provost and the chief executives and the heads of faculty and these are only helping to collaborate. But government has failed to understand the collaborative aspect of leadership. That means that leadership does not just stop at financing. It does not stop just at administration. You have to collaborate, express your ideas, pursue the national policy of education, produce vital teachers to build the nation. particularly this time out to produce the foundational education, that basic education that we will need to produce the bigger ones who will make doctors, who will make those ones who value society. Does government not recognize that it is because it has failed in its duty as a leader, the primary leader in development education, which is its responsibility, as stated in the Constitution, that affiliates and lecturers are now migrating into the business of teacher training? And I begin to wonder, sir, that will not give us the change we desire. Because the businessman that established a teacher institution knows primarily well that he has nothing to display on the shelf for the future of a teacher that will become attractive for anybody to buy. So what is his intention? As a pavilions and lecturers, he has a secret. He has some other things to sell, so that people will come to his institution, pay school fees, he makes his profits. And this now leads us to say that the answer is not in government neglecting its functions to allow for private bodies or persons to establish teacher institutions. It is not their business, because the profit they are looking for is not there. Nothing is sellable there. Is it the future of the teacher that become attractive that the students will go there and pay? It is now there that they sell certificates that will now portray grades for money. And that's what happens in private universities. The private universities will want to make sure and give you a scale of how many may fail. I said may. If it is possible, make my university attractive so that nobody fails. And if nobody fails, is there an examination? It is not natural. So in the teacher education sector, it is the government that should see itself first as leader by its responsibility and the provisions of national policy education to produce federal teachers that can produce persons that will build the nation in all ramifications.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade. In fact, I could allow you to go on and on, because I can see how passionate you are about this. That you have put a lot of blame on government, and you believe government is the pathfinder for this. You know, the issue of teachers having dignity has been an age-long issue. I wonder whether it has become, it was even caused by generations of teachers before now, where they began to look down on the profession, and of course government helped them by going there to neglect the funding of education, which led to also teachers now having to strive to survive, institutions having to strive to survive. Incidentally, my late father was a teacher too, and for many people, he lived like his name. His name was Makonjuola, which means that you do not rush to get wealth. And that was what many people said. He lived according to his name, because he believed a lot in the virtue of the teacher. But how do we make the teacher education better beyond government? Professionalization of teachers. Prof, let us look at professionalization of teachers. Do you see this as a path to the successful recognition of the dignity of the teacher?
Yes, it is the right path to do, but you need to get the framework right. In my submission earlier, I tried to bring out 3 elements in the process of achieving change. I said values, I said structures, and then processes. Values, structures, and processes. By values, what do I mean? How do the goals that we have set, how do they connect with the national goals? The values, we talk of values here. If we say objectives of teacher education are stated in NTE, for instance, how do they connect with the objectives of education generally, and of course, the education of the Nigerian nation? In terms of nation building, if we get that right, and we can position the objectives of education as what I would call the overarching objectives, once we can escalate it above all other objectives, that teachers, they will use education as a stepping stone. How did the teachers in 1978? I started from primary and I moved all through the ladder, all the rungs of the ladder. And when we were even undergraduates, because we were doing better than those who were in mainstream faculty, they were trying to attract us to the faculty. And I told them, I have chosen to be a teacher. Mind you, in the 70s, they were paying us allowances. But that actually did not stop many of my contemporaries ending up in the banks. Because that was not, they didn't actually buy into the values. So we need to reorientate those, we need to reorientate the profession and professionalization to be, should prioritize that. That the greatest element, the greatest justice you can do to professionalization is to make the condition of service the most attractive. Then talking about structures, my co-discussants have talked about this. Macro, micro. Macro, when you start to talk of individual institutions. But there's what we call cascading mediocrity. Cascading mediocrity. When you look at places where yes. By the way, I will see teacher education institutions, particularly colleges of education, as part of the tertiary education system in Nigeria. The rot and decay, we are talking about colleges of education today, are not peculiar to them. They are there in the tertiary education subsector generally. Brain drain or exit from the system, dilapidating infrastructure, underfunding, imposition even of leadership, because there is politicization there. And the structures we are operating, how well are they positioned to deliver? How well are they positioned to deliver? I have been part of the review of what they call something like maybe 2-3 year plan for tertiary education or university education in Nigeria. Something like that. It's available online. It's available online. But the first thing I observed, during our participation, was that when you are starting this thing, you didn't involve us. Now you have produced this thing. You want us to come and ratify. My own union will not accept this. Because what they had there, they were talking of establishing more institutions. Realize you are not catering for the existing ones. Who is deceiving who? Go to the National Assembly now. You can be sure that they have nothing less than 30 bills proposing new colleges of education. Not less than 50 bills proposing new universities, polytechnics, and so on. Is that what we need? How well are the existing institutions delivering? So it means that those who are there, they are not connected with the system. In 2012, I would say we we advocated for the needs assessment of universities, public universities in Nigeria. What we came up with, the report was scandalous. And this thing we keep saying about 1.3 trillion being proposed to be spent over 6 years to fix our universities. They were real. They went there and visited first generation universities, where we saw first generation universities. We saw them using kerosene stoves in place of bouncing burners. And they were fetching water in buckets into a 21st century chemistry laboratory. So what quality education are we proposing? So when we talk about teacher education is not about colleges of education alone. We are producing them in universities. I've been in the Faculty of Education of my university since 1988. I've been producing teachers. I've been dean, I've been nation dean, you know the processes.
Okay, Paul, I will have to cut you short here because we don't have so much time. But what I have gotten from what you said too is that the quality of even those who produce as teachers is very questionable. Because if
because of the environment where they are produced.
Yes, exactly. If they are produced in that kind of environment that you have described, then the quality of education that is being given to them is very questionable. And it's a major challenge, Prof. Because we're looking at how to produce leaders. We're looking at how to produce good leaders, and the bedrock is education. Last week you were talking about producing more schools. Last week I was in a panel that was trying to assess the Federal Ministry of Education, and the ministry officials were complaining seriously how they were talking about trying to, not even education now, but health, how they were trying to fund primary health centers that are existing. But those who sit in NAS are more interested in building more primary health centers. For them, the structure is the success. When you build a structure and just call it primary health center, it's just like the schools too. We have so many universities being proposed. Every day you hear NAS has approved because there is the issue of, okay, since Mr. A has a tertiary institution in his village, my own village must have a tertiary institution. After all, we are both House of Assembly and National Assembly members. And so it brings us to the point of the politicians against the technocrats. Where do we get a common ground, compromise, when we have those who are politicians imposing on technocrats on the way forward for teacher education? Prof.
Thank you. Answer to your question is to stop politicization of education. Once education is not politicized, it then means institutions are built on the basis of merit and needs of the society.
But that's very almost impossible when you know that politicians are the ones who are in charge of making the decisions. Politicians will always continue to politicize things.
Yes, because again, we have the power to change them. So we need more enlightenment. And if you observe, that is what people don't want. The more we remain a large number of illiterates, the better for some people. Because it is only then when you are an elite, you now begin to know your right and to begin to ask for a right. I think we can change it with our votes. This is the only thing left for us to do as a nation. My prof here was talking about the university, the situation in the university. And I'm sure if Prof goes to a lab in a college of education, you will start meeting sir. You won't be able to talk to him. Because the need assessment, as he said, the universities have had their share of the need assessment. At least large sum of money has been released by government. Leaving his feeder team Okay, Prof. You have been that in the ACE. They will produce students who will come to the Faculty of Education to have degree. Till now, we are struggling with need assessment, and I'm sure the unions have been on this almost every second of the day. So again, where is the place of teacher education? You look at the hierarchy in Nigeria. Everything is university, polytechnic. And when they remember college of education. So even in funding, this is the way the institutions are funded. The universities has the highest, followed by polytechnics, and your almighty college of education is always an asset. And it is college of education that is expected to produce teachers who will produce students for the polytechnic, who will produce students for the universities. Anywhere is found foolish. So we know what to do. Like he said, the scheme of service of teachers, all those who left teaching because of poor condition of service. Yes. No, today make it attractive, they will all come back. The old experienced teachers of Nigeria who are still alive today will come back to teaching profession if the condition of service are made better and attractive. So, the politics of creating more institutions will continue. I'm sorry I have 6 new qualities already. They are as confused as anybody. They don't even know where to go, what to do, and more are being produced. So, it is time, and one of the basic problems is that each time a union decides to go on strike, they do not receive the sympathy of the public. Public does not look at the issues at stake. They see the teachers as being enemies to their children's progress. Until such a time, sir, when there is going to be a kind of coming to terms with the problem. Now, no longer is for ASU or ASU, or let parents join, and you will see that everything that we are fighting for in this country will be realized.
Thank you very much. It's going to be very difficult. And I ask you as a former president of KWASU, are there times before you get to the point of strike action, are there times that there are engagements without conflict with politicians in the National Assembly, for instance, to allow them, especially with the different committees, to allow them understand? I know for many politicians in the National Assembly, engagements mean another opportunity to make money. But for KWASU, they may not. Have you attempted at all to have these engagements with the National Assembly for them to understand? Because for us to be able to discuss effective leadership, or leadership, we have to get to the root of the matter, which is what we are doing now. Have you had engagements with them in a very cordial atmosphere for them to understand these issues so that they could take action? Or when you go and take the extreme measure, which is strike, they will understand that at least they have been engagements going on?
From commending my superiors here who have discussed identity, because they have come to condescend and accepted the separation situation of the teacher education, particularly college of education. Even though you will see the claim that they are within here and there, there seems to be 2 sides, the education sector and the university system. The engagement you asked after, we have a language that was not just concocted, that is just descriptive of what KWASU does
more extensively than strike actions. And if you count the history of strikes in this country, you discover that COASU has done the list of strikes and strike actions. And yet it has succeeded in getting certain things at the level at which government desires for tertiary institutions. But let me tell you about that language. Professor Yohama is in this house. He will say, he didn't go on top things. And from his own time, look at his days of service. He said, COASU pursues issues with maturity, tact, and diplomacy. I was the secretary. I used to fight him. You didn't say it was conflict. You are not for confrontation. He said, hey, that's one command of you confront. Because these people do not appreciate teacher education. The children of the high and the mighty, who make up mostly the politicians, do not have their children in the college of education system. We duly recognize that even when you go on the strike action, they hardly remember that you're a strike. But when they ask to check it, because their children are there, because they have big buildings, because they are located in the center of the cities, they quickly begin to pretend to be serious about education as a pretend. So we know what we are suffering from. We pursue with diplomacy a lot. I must inform you. Do you know that this union, in collaboration with Sequoia, have sponsored and are sponsoring expensively a bill in the National Assembly that creates a greater future for the teacher education system in this country, for politicians, for this nation, and not for us. The bill is there. And will you know that all that goes to sponsoring a bill in the House of Assembly has come with it? It does not mean that COASU cannot go on strike. We have. But you look at the public sympathy that one of my superior discussants, Professor Barukas, announced that it lacks. Even when ASU goes on strike, you go on goes and these people are there. Forget it, they didn't strike for money. But even that strike actually it is for money. It is not helping governments to create the attraction and retention of good hands that the tertiary education system and teacher education system desires. Don't talk of the infrastructure to make noise about. Talk about the salaries to go on strike for. Is it not desirable that the teacher education industry be attractive? But the issue of strike has always been the last resort. You should be aware that even for us, it has usually become the last resort. But they are only better positions because the system is more desired. Let me give you a statistics. Why I say the university system is more desired, particularly in university. Even though most of the education today award degrees indirectly under condition of these universities. I give you my statistics that for every admission most colleges of education do today, if you award degrees, 1/4 of the admissions you will do is for the basic teacher education. The more attractive one is the degree, and we use the structure prepared for award of production of teachers for basic education to accommodate the 75% of those from universities, because we also assist in awarding degrees. So the society's attitude, we are conscious does not understand strike. But what do? We go, we mobilize, we kind of calm down. And that's why you see releases. Thank God they're from the media. Thank God the media is listening. We don't go on strike because we are ignorant. Not even the universities. We go on strike after all options have been exhausted. We go on strike after followers and even parents sometimes have started saying, so what else do you want to do? We go on strike even in sympathy with those people you see as our chief executive leaders who are put there to pursue visions and missions that without resources.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Comrade Remy. Please, a round of applause for that. You may be a part of government. Anyway, I want to thank Professor Abiodun Obiemi. Thank you very much for talking to us. I want to also thank Professor Farouk Haruna. Thank you very much. And of course, I want to thank Comrade Remy Makinde for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all the members of the high table who had to leave their high table. I want to invite you back to the high table. Please, everybody, back to the high table. It has been wonderful doing this with you. Hi. And I'm lead consultant for Cinema Productions Limited. I also present AIG's Global Business. Join you again when we celebrate another leader. Thank you very much for having me.